Number 10. Snorkeling mother attacked. How can you stop an angry shark when it's on a steadfast rampage? Yeah, I have no idea either. Take for example the horrific story from 1985 when a mother was literally ripped apart by a giant great white shark that swam up out of nowhere. This was an extremely tragic incident for the family, seeing as Shirley Durden was only 33 years old when she was consumed by a 20-foot monster shark in front of her terrified and screaming loved ones. This gruesome incident is still one of the most infamous shark attacks in the history of Australia, simply for how unrelenting and unmerciful the shark was in its assault. And if you don't like gore, you should definitely skip ahead to the next story, because what the shark did to this woman was atrocious. She literally had her head torn from her body while diving for scallops off the coast of southern Australia. Her family sat and watched from the shore as the giant shark bit her head completely off her body. Just imagine the horror felt by her husband and children in those moments, having to watch something so brutal. Apparently, Shirley had been the first person in a decade to be killed by a great white shark in the south of Australia. But of course, Shirley will surely not be the last. Number 9. 12 deaths in 4 days. Not all shark attacks happen down under in Australia. One of the most brutal incidences of an enraged shark going on a vicious destruction spree happened in 1916 along the New Jersey coastline. This was what inspired a mass fear and paranoia of sharks in the United States today. Over the course of just 4 days, a single shark went out of its way to sneak up on unsuspecting swimmers and attack them. What makes this such an interesting story is that before 1916, most scientists didn't think sharks were a threat to humans. They just thought they were big, stupid fish. Rolling my eyes. The first doomed swimmer to be killed by the shark in 1916 was a man named Charles Van Sant. He had arrived at Beach Haven on July the 1st with the thought that he would have a fun-filled day of innocent swimming and relaxing in the hot sun. Unfortunately, a demented shark came out of literally nowhere and ripped him apart. After his death, 3 more followed, some of them as much as 45 miles away from each other. The final attack came on July the 12th when a single shark murdered 2 children off a small town of Matawan, 11 miles from the beach, which is really weird as sharks don't usually venture that far inland. In this case, the assailant was eventually caught by fishermen, and it turned out to be a pretty small great white considering it was a mass murderer. It was only 7.5 feet long and 350 pounds. Still, it became a legend that would eventually spawn the book Jaws and later the movie. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome! Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Unexpected death. It's true that you never really see a shark coming, and if you do, chances are it's already too late. While diving off the coast of Mendocino, a man named Cliff Zimmerman could only watch in horror as his old friend and diving partner was ravaged by a shark. A shark that literally came out of nowhere. It swam up as fast as an underwater bullet and ripped his friend into pieces. According to Zimmerman himself, he heard a whoosh noise like a submarine, saw the shark brush past him, and before he knew what was happening, the water was filled with blood. Zimmerman claims that the incident was over in mere seconds and nobody saw the shark again. The shark came in for the kill, it made the kill, and it vanished back into the great below. A real dine and dash fiasco. This is truly an apex predator in its prime, hunting whatever it feels like in its own domain. The poor human never stood a chance. Number 7. Swan River Shark Attack. The last place you expect an angry shark to turn up is a river. Shark attacks are something that generally happen out at sea. But of course, Australia is a crazy place. Just recently, a man got into quite a bit of trouble in Swan River when an angry bull shark came out of nowhere and decided to give him a taste. This shocked the entire community because it had been 50 years since the last shark attack in any river system near the city of Perth. Apparently, bull sharks are actually in many of the waterways of Australia, but they aren't that aggressive. The man who was just bitten and suffered critical injuries from the shark's teeth must have done something to really aggravate the creature. Either that, or it was simply in a bad mood and decided to take it out on the silly human. According to the news report from ABC, there are dozens of sharks in almost every major river in Australia, but most of them hang out in the upper areas of the rivers eating crabs and other sea creatures. It's very rare for a bull shark to become aggressive and attack a person. In this guy's case, he luckily survived the incident and was released from the hospital. Number 6. Mauled by an angry shark. Not everyone gets to go surfing and do a meet and greet with a great white shark. It is a rare experience that either ends with an overwhelming respect of the animal or a short trip to the morgue. A surfer who was recently attacked in the waters near Kangaroo Island narrowly escaped his own trip to the morgue and has definitely been humbled by the experience. It all happened during a seemingly normal day of surfing. According to him, the attack felt like getting hit by a literal truck. The shark came out of nowhere. The guy was sitting on his surfboard, felt something on his leg, and suddenly he was in the powerful jaws of the beast. The shark bit him on his back, on his elbow, and on his buttocks. He got only the briefest glimpse of the heinous predator before it let him go and disappeared back into the depths of the ocean below. The shark apparently didn't want to eat him, it just wanted to sample his meat and show him who was boss. The surfer sustained serious injuries all over his body, yet somehow managed to swim 984 feet back to the shore. Even after such a horrifying experience, the surfer was feeling lucky and grateful, which is definitely the best way to look at this kind of incident. Number 5. Death from below. When it comes to the fury of an angry shark, a young girl named Kayla Marlowe learned the hard way of just how devastating these impressive animals can be. The girl had been visiting the popular Waihi Beach in New Zealand when she was attacked and killed by a shark with a really bad attitude. According to the local New Zealand police, the area where the attack occurred was blocked off for at least 7 long days while an investigation was launched. As for the poor girl, nobody saw exactly what happened, but she was taken from the water with serious leg wounds, and despite attempts at resuscitation, she was pronounced dead at the scene. The family is obviously devastated, and so is the community. This was the first fatal shark attack in 8 years in the country of New Zealand, and nobody knows why it happened. The shark clearly came out of nowhere, and it was apparently pretty angry. The saddest part is that nobody will ever know the reason for this girl's untimely death. Number 4. The USS Indianapolis. Believe it or not, the worst shark attack in history happened on July 29, 1945, after a United States naval ship was taken down by a Japanese sub. But the ship sinking was only the first part of the nightmare. After the USS Indianapolis was sunk, 900 out of the 1,196 men aboard made it into the water still alive and just floating there waiting to be rescued. But as the sun came up on July 30th, all hell broke loose. It appeared that curious sharks had been drawn by the noise from the explosion. Plus, the water was already full of blood. Now there were 900 men unprotected in the middle of the ocean waiting to be saved, and the hungry sharks used this to their advantage. First, the sharks began feeding on people who were already dead. But more and more sharks kept coming, and the food began to run out. As the days went by, many of the survivors died from heat, thirst, and many people even suffered from hallucinations and drank seawater only to die from salt poisoning. Their corpses were eaten by the sharks. But some survivors were also consumed. According to a historical report from Smithsonian Magazine, it has been estimated that at least 150 people died from being picked off by the ravenous sharks. When rescue finally showed up days later, only 317 lucky survivors remained. Number 3. The Flying Great White Shark. If you thought sharks were scary in the water, just wait until you hear this next story. A great white shark was recently caught on video jumping out of the water, flying through the air, and ripping apart a helpless seal. The clip was filmed for a National Geographic show being put on Disney+, but nobody could have expected this to happen. The merciless shark shot out of the depths with its toothy jaw open, then arced through the air while crunching down on the poor little seal. Who would have thought the great white sharks were powerful enough that they could hop out of the ocean and soar through the air before crashing back into the water? Apparently, nowhere is really safe from one of these unexpected attacks, especially if you're a seal. Number 2. Shark versus kangaroo. But seals aren't the only animals that need to watch out for sharks. A kangaroo recently became the target for an angry shark after it decided to take a little swim in southern Australia. An eyewitness saw the entire thing while walking his dogs on the beach. The kangaroo must have been sick or in danger, as that's the only reason they ever go out into the sea. But in this case, it was a hugely devastating mistake for the marsupial. The eyewitness told Australia's ABC News that the kangaroo headed out into the water, and before it knew what was happening, a furious shark came out of nowhere and tore it apart. The eyewitness waited around for a little while longer to see what would happen, but the shark apparently swam off back into the ocean. Later on, the man's story was confirmed by an official who discovered the carcass of the very kangaroo mangled on the beach. The moral of the story here is that great white sharks are not in the least bit picky about who they take their anger out on. Number 1. Hammerhead sharks. We've talked a lot today about great white sharks, but the truth is that hammerhead sharks can be equally as terrifying. They're certainly not as dangerous, but they are definitely still great at freaking people out. This is especially true when they're angry and come out of nowhere. In a recent video shared by Fox News, you could see a deadly hammerhead shark swimming dangerously close to a completely oblivious swimmer. The video was taken from a drone off the coast of Miami Beach, and it is one of the most heart-stopping encounters that a person can have, especially when they don't know it's happening. Of course, nobody knows if this hammerhead shark was angry or not. It didn't end up eating the guy, even though he had his legs dangling in front like juicy meat treats. Plus, hammerhead sharks don't usually attack humans. In this case, the guy got away lucky. Number 10. Black Panther and the Anaconda. The biggest snakes in the world right now that we know of are anacondas, specifically the green anaconda from South America. It is the largest serpent on our planet, with a length on average of about 23 feet and weighing up to 280 pounds. These snakes live in the rivers and waterways of the Amazon jungle. They swim incredibly fast, and because of their massive appearance and special snake qualities, they can eat just about anything they want. They are the apex predators of the Amazon. There is only one other animal that can really think about challenging even the smallest anaconda. Of course, this is the Black Panther. If you don't believe that a cat could take on an anaconda, you haven't seen the video uploaded just a few years ago that shows the fierce fight between a melanistic jaguar, which is really what a black panther is, and an anaconda. Throughout the video, there's quite a bit of a struggle, but the big cat was far too powerful. It actually managed to get the snake out of the water and onto the land, where it probably ate it for dinner. The snake was trying to wriggle away from the vicious cat, but it just wasn't quick enough. The anaconda may be the biggest snake on the planet, but it's apparently no match for a black panther. Number 9. The olive python. Next up on our list is the incredibly huge olive python, which you can find all throughout the outback in Australia. It's one of the biggest and meanest snakes in the world. So mean, in fact, that one was recently spotted swallowing an Australian freshwater crocodile in the swamps of Mount Isa in Queensland. This was extraordinary. Snake experts know pythons are capable of swallowing creatures larger than them, but these types of pythons typically only eat things like rats, birds, bats, and other small mammals, while their most ambitious meals consist of kangaroos and possums and even porcupines, though spiky porcupines are often a pretty bad decision for any snake. You know, with the spikes and all. The last thing anyone expects for the olive python to actually gobble up is an entire crocodile. GG Wildlife Reserve Inc. recently uploaded the photos on Facebook after discovering what the snake was doing. To be straight, the crocodile really had no chance. This particular olive python was a giant, much larger than your average Australian snake. It was easily over 13 feet in length, with the freshwater crocodile only being about 5 feet from snout to tail. That means there was extra room in the snake's belly for a second crocodile if it felt like trying its luck again. Crocs may be some of the largest and meanest types of reptiles in Australia, but it's no match for a hungry and sly serpent like this. Hey, real quick, if this is the first time you're checking out the channel, thanks for watching. Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Danger in the Everglades. The Florida Everglades is a pretty terrifying place. Not only is it filled with mosquitoes, giant reptiles with rows of sharp teeth, and plenty of other scary animals, it's also home to some of the biggest Burmese pythons on the planet. These snakes are huge and have been introduced into the Everglades over the years due to neglectful pet owners. The Burmese python originally came from Asia, but because Florida is so similar to its natural habitat, the snake has thrived in the United States. People get these snakes as pets, realize that they are way too big to handle, and abandon them outdoors. Now there are thousands of them breeding in Florida. How big does this snake get? Well, according to Florida Fish and Wildlife, the Burmese python can reach a length of up to 26 feet in its natural habitat, and it can weigh over 200 pounds. However, the average Burmese python in Florida is only between 8 and 10 feet, but that length was demolished recently when a python hunter came across the biggest snake either of them had ever seen before. They were hunting in the Everglades when the huge monster of a snake slithered in front of their path. They quickly scrambled to catch it and were shocked when they found out the python was an incredible 18 feet and 9 inches long and weighing 104 pounds, meaning they had captured the largest Burmese python in Florida history. Number 7. Giant tree snake. Believe it or not, some of the biggest snakes in the world aren't even dangerous. Take the recent story of an Australian reptile catcher who arrived at an industrial site in the small town of Coolum, thinking he was called in to catch a dangerous eastern brown snake. Instead, Stuart Mackenzie found one of the biggest common tree snakes on the planet. And this guy was no stranger to snakes. He owned a local snake removal service, so he had already seen pretty much everything there is to see. Or at least he thought so. The tree snake that he captured from the industrial site ended up being nearly 5 feet long. It had actually disrupted work because the builders thought they were dealing with an extremely venomous snake that could strike and kill at any moment. The eastern brown snake is big, bad, definitely dangerous, and one of the most toxic land snakes on the planet. But the fact that the tree snake was big enough that the workers confused it with the brown snake is wild. Of course, Stuart knew what he was dealing with as soon as he located the creature. The giant tree snake was relocated into the bushes without being harmed, and later on the workers were able to get back to their jobs. According to the man himself, it was the largest tree snake he had ever seen. Number 6. Nightmares in Alabama. Let's move back across the world to the United States, where in 2020, the longest snake in North America was found to be breeding in Alabama for the first time in 46 years. This is the eastern indigo snake. The young snake was likely the result of several different government agencies and universities that have been trying for the past few years to reintroduce the indigo snake into the Conecuh National Forest as part of a conservation effort. Apparently, it's working. But should the government really be introducing these giant nightmare-looking snakes into Alabama? The answer is a definite yes. The eastern indigo snake may be huge and scary, able to reach a length of over 9 feet, but it's not that dangerous. It's a non-venomous snake, meaning it poses absolutely no threats to humans. It's actually a critical part of the local ecosystem, and it's been missing since the 1950s. The eastern indigo snake can still be found in abundance in Florida and South Georgia, but it was on the brink of extinction in Alabama. Hopefully, with these new efforts, the biodiversity of the state can be brought back to life. Number 5. Giant snake invades Walmart. The last place anyone expects to find a giant snake is in Walmart. This incident happened on August the 7th, when a Walmart in Odessa was besieged by a slithering customer who had no intention of buying anything. The giant snake simply wanted to terrorize and possibly eat some of the other customers. It was discovered by store employees while doing a routine walkthrough of the store. They quickly called animal control, who came and took the snake away without harming it, though they never did say what type of snake it was. All we really know is that it was huge. But this wasn't the first time an incident like this happened. According to a report from Newsweek, in 2019, another Texas Walmart was also besieged by a snake. A giant rat snake was found slithering through the parking lot, actively preventing a woman from entering her vehicle. A police officer arrived on the scene and took care of the serpent, allowing the woman to finally get into her truck. It's not really clear what exactly is luring all these snakes to their neighborhood Walmarts, but hopefully somebody gets to the bottom of it soon. Number 4. African rock python. The African rock python is yet another giant type of python. It is the biggest snake in all of Africa, and just a little smaller than its cousin, the Burmese python we talked about earlier. It can be found slithering through South Africa, growing anywhere from 9 to 10 feet in length, though the largest specimens ever recorded have been upwards of 15 feet. Even though it's a bit smaller than the other pythons, this snake is a force to be reckoned with. A large African rock python was recently found eating an entire goat on someone's farm in the Tugela Valley of South Africa. A snake removal company had to be called in to get the giant python off the client's property, but it wasn't an easy job. The handler managed to track down the snake easily enough, but the hard part came from walking over 3 miles back to his vehicle while carrying the 55-pound serpent on his back. To make things even worse, it apparently peed on him during the walk. Not only is the African rock python huge and deadly, but apparently it's a little rude. As for this particularly rude python, it was transported to a local game reserve and then released. The guy that the snake peed on had to drive home without his shirt on. Number 3. 50-foot anaconda. We've all heard the tales of supernaturally large snakes hiding out in the wild. We've already established that the anaconda is the biggest snake in the world, but there are always reports coming in of snakes growing upwards of 50 feet and being captured in a blurry viral video. Of course, these are almost always nonsense. Take for example, a recent video that went viral on Twitter that apparently shows an anaconda with a length of over 50 feet crossing a Brazilian river. The video first surfaced online in 2018, and it definitely seems like there is a huge snake crossing the length of the river, but of course, the claims are false. The video has actually been stretched and manipulated, making the serpent appear far larger than it really is. It also makes the river look ridiculously wide, when in fact it's quite slim. The anaconda was probably only 10 to 12 feet long. Number 2. King of the monsters. 60 million years ago, just after the extinction of the dinosaurs, a monster of a snake slithered around the planet, the Titanoboa. This nightmare of a snake dominated the tropics of South America. According to the fossil evidence discovered in 2009 in Colombia by a team of international scientists, the Titanoboa grew to be about 42 feet long and weighed somewhere around 2,500 pounds. According to paleontologist Jonathan Block, the Titanoboa was even larger than many of the fantasy snakes conceived of by Hollywood, like the snake in the movie Anaconda that tried to eat Jennifer Lopez. Even that fictitious snake was nowhere near as large as the actual Titanoboa. Even though it was so incredibly huge, it apparently only ate a couple times a year. The gargantuan snake would feast on a huge turtle or a prehistoric crocodile, and then just kind of hang out in the river for a few months before it would strike again. Number 1. Snakes in the ceiling. It seems no matter where you go in Australia, you can't escape giant snakes. A man in Australia was recently given the shock of a lifetime when a pair of massive serpents crashed through his kitchen ceiling and nearly gave him a heart attack. He found 2 giant carpet snakes, also known as carpet pythons, when they fell from the ceiling and onto the kitchen floor in his home in Brisbane. Then they slithered off into other rooms. The 2 large snakes had apparently been fighting over a third female snake inside his ceiling. What's truly disturbing is that each of the snakes was around 9 or 10 feet long and weighed upwards of 40 pounds. They were some of the biggest and fattest carpet snakes that the native Australian had ever seen. Luckily, a snake catcher arrived to take care of the situation. He wrangled the 2 large males and relocated them to a state forest where they couldn't do any more harm, but there was a concern because the third snake, the female that the males had been fighting over, was nowhere to be found. The only good news is that carpet pythons aren't generally dangerous, as they have no venom. Still, you definitely don't want to take your chances with any large snake that you find in Australia. According to professional snake catcher Raymond Hoser, if you get bitten by a venomous snake in Australia, you will almost certainly die without treatment. In the case that you are bitten, you should put a bandage on your arm and drive straight to the hospital. Number 10. Whale versus boat. Some of the craziest animal incidents involve whales attacking boats. This is a horrifying thing that can happen almost anywhere in the 7 seas. One of the most recent run-ins with a dangerous whale happened off the Cape of Good Hope, South Africa, when a juvenile whale sprang out of the water and smashed into a yacht. During the attack, the whale managed to break the mast and scare everyone on board, though luckily nobody died. Instead, the whale simply left a bit of blubber and skin on the deck from where it hit. It's been a mystery to scientists why whales sometimes attack boats, especially when they know a vessel is right there. Now though, scientists believe that this type of acrobatic display could be a signal of irritation or aggression. On the other hand, scientists are also saying that whales who do this could just be young and curious, like normal human teenagers. In South Africa, the legal limit you're actually allowed to approach a whale is within 900 feet. So, this particular incident could have been caused by the boat harassing the whale. Then again, maybe the whale was just out to get a bit of attention. Number 9. Cod Eats Human. A lot of the craziest animal incidents involve an animal eating something it probably shouldn't have. For example, take a look at the giant cod that somehow managed to get a human head inside its stomach. This giant cod was found by workers in an Australian fish factory when they sliced the fish open to find an adult male's head rolling around in the stomach of the fish. The fish in question was about 5.5 feet in length and weighed 97 pounds, though surely 4 or 5 of those pounds could be attributed to the human head. This was one of those weird incidents where nobody was really sure how it even happened. While it might seem like the cod ate someone, that probably isn't the case. It was more likely that the cod was just an opportunistic feeder and happened to see this guy's head floating through the water. As for the victim, the New York Post said that it may have been a trawler who had been missing since the previous week after falling overboard in the Pacific Ocean. As for the murderer, a sea life expert from the Stirling University in Scotland claimed that it could have been a crocodile. The crocodile likely chomped the guy up after his body floated close to shore. Then, the cod swam by later and gobbled the man's head into its belly, where it was found by the factory workers about a week later. According to one of the factory workers, there is amazing stuff found in fish all the time, but nobody at the factory has ever seen anything quite as horrific or strange as a human head. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome! Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 8. Golden Retriever and the Fork. Speaking of animals eating things they shouldn't, check out this next weird incident of the Golden Retriever puppy that needed to undergo an emergency medical procedure after somehow swallowing a fork. Dogs are known for eating some weird stuff, but this really pushes the envelope. The puppy was only 5 months old when he was rushed to the Adelaide Animal Emergency and Referral Centre to receive an emergency endoscopy to find and then get rid of the large utensils stuck inside of him. According to the report from ABC News, the owners of the dog claimed that they walked away from the dinner table only for a second before the puppy jumped on the table and started scarfing things down. Somehow, during its frantic eating frenzy, a fork got mixed in with the real food. It wasn't until a few minutes later that they realised one of the forks was gone and they couldn't find it. Veterinarians at the animal hospital were professionals. They quickly took an X-ray, located the fork, and then safely removed it from the dog's stomach by slowly pulling it out of his throat. The surgery was minimally invasive and low risk. It was a huge success, and the dog was allowed to go home, where he healed and made a full recovery. Number 7. Bat bombers. Another one of the weirdest animal incidents happened during World War II, when a man named Dr. Adams got a wild idea that North American guano bats could be used in the war effort by devastating the enemy soldiers with firebomb attacks. In January of 1942, Dr. Adams actually sent a proposal to the White House about using bats as bombers. And surprisingly, it actually got the green light. The idea of using real bats as soldiers was passed on to the Army Chemical Warfare Service and the Army Air Forces. But of course, this batty idea didn't make it very far. Dr. Adams and a small team of other professionals gathered up a bunch of bats. Incendiary bombs were designed to be attached to their little chests, and on May 21st, 1943, 5 groups of bats fitted with dummy bombs were dropped from 5,000 feet out of a B-25. It was a disaster. Almost none of the bats were able to fly because they hadn't recovered from their hibernation, and they died upon impact. There were a few more tests done, including some experiments where they put bats in ice cube trays and forced them to hibernate. But no matter what they tried, it just didn't seem to work. The army finally called off the testing in May 29, 1943. Number 6. Seagulls are shy. Seagulls like to stare, especially if you have food, but it turns out that seagulls don't like you staring at them. Scientists have now discovered the secret to keeping your chips safe from scavenging gulls while at the beach or on the boardwalk. All you have to do is stare directly into their eyes. After researchers at the University of Exeter completed their study on gulls and their food thievery, it turned out that the birds were far more likely to rob the food when nobody was looking. They tested this by placing a bag of chips on the ground and then timing how long it took for the herring gulls to approach. The results are going to shock you. On average, it took the gulls 21 seconds longer to steal the bag of chips when one of the researchers was staring directly at them. Of course, not all the gulls were willing to participate in the study. Only 27 out of 74 gulls participated. Out of the 27 guilty gulls that tried to snatch up the chips, only 19 of them completed both tests of looking at them and not looking at them. By completing this study, it seems that most seagulls don't actually want to rob your food, but there are a handful out there who are a bit bolder than their feathered friends. But regardless, it seems that all seagulls are a little bit shy. Number 5. Penguin poop bombs. Here is one of the most ridiculous studies that has probably ever been done. In case you didn't know, penguins are actually able to make bombs out of their poop. This is disgusting, but it's also nature. Penguins are able to shoot their poop bombs at a distance of over 4 feet, and it's absolutely awful to see, and even more awful if you're their target. These tiny aquatic birds basically have a jet propulsion system built into their butts and are able to defecate at twice their own body length. Rather than just leaving this gross fact alone, scientists actually decided to study how and why the birds are able to do this. I won't get into the very gross specifics, but after a handful of studies from between 2005 and 2019, a few key things have been determined. The first important thing is to understand why. It's all about staying tidy. Penguins blast their poop away from them as a way to keep their nests clean. In this way, it's actually less disgusting than you might think. However, the penguin poop bombs actually cause an occupational hazard for those who have to care for them in zoos and aquariums. If the caregivers aren't careful, they often end up with penguin poop bombs straight in the face. Number 4. Python and python. You've probably seen pictures of bloated pythons, and it's common knowledge snakes swallow their prey whole. A manager at the Parry Creek Farm Tourist Resort in Western Australia recently captured photos of a giant python vomiting up another python. This kind of thing is almost never witnessed, and it's crazy that somebody managed to get a photo evidence of it happening. The manager found a python about 13 feet long and decided to take it away from his house. But during the transport, the python began to spit something up. As the man stood and watched, it became clear that the python was puking up another snake. According to Live Science and National Geographic, this isn't as rare as we might think, it's just not seen very often. Snakes, and indeed pythons, will eat absolutely anything they can get their mouths on. When a python wants to eat another python larger than itself, it will force the larger snake's spinal column to bend in a very particular pattern as it eats it, thereby stuffing the larger snake snugly into its belly. In this case, it looked like the smaller snake bit off a bit more than it could swallow, and it barfed its uncomfortable meal right out. Number 3. Rampaging mice. Sure, mice attacks are extremely rare, but that doesn't mean they don't happen. For example, take the bizarre and horrific story of the rampaging mice that have been on a killing spree since the early 2000s. Their victims are albatrosses, massive seabirds that apparently don't have the know-how or the motivation to defend themselves against the mad mice. It apparently happens in clusters all over the Hawaiian archipelago. A seabird researcher named Christopher Jones was working on the Marion Island and Gough Island back in 2017 and 2018 when he stumbled upon 3 adult seabirds that had been brutally injured and 23 that were dead, all from the attacking mice. What's really strange about this is the islands are separated by about 2,500 miles of ocean. This means that all the islands in the area are probably populated by mice which have no natural predators because they were brought there by boat and are an invasive species. As it turns out, the entire population of seabirds that live on these islands are in danger. The mice are starving and they have no problem attacking and killing something 300 times their size. The birds don't know what to do about it. If nothing is done, the Hawaiian archipelago will be full of rats and all the birds will be gone. Number 2. Dog versus crocodile. At the remote Goat Island Lodge deep in the Australian outback, there once lived a dog named Pippa. Pippa was a terrier who got locally famous for her exploits with a saltwater crocodile named Casey. This tiny dog would bark, bully, and often chase the saltwater croc away from the banks of the river near where they both lived. Even the tourists who came through that area were shocked to see the little dog literally terrorizing the crocodile. But it was an adorable story and people applauded Pippa's incredible bravery. But of course, the crocodile eventually had enough. One day, Casey the crocodile struck back, grabbing Pippa with her powerful jaws and dragging the dog into the river in front of terrified visitors. According to the owner of the dog, Pippa had made the silly mistake of approaching the face of the crocodile instead of her tail. And considering Casey was an 11-foot beast of teeth and raw power, it was no surprise that the brave little dog eventually met his end. And while Pippa's owner told the local news stations he was upset by the whole incident, he also said it was bound to happen sooner or later. He couldn't stop Pippa from terrorizing the croc, she simply loved it too much. Number 1. Zombie dogs. I have saved the most chilling animal incident for last, so be prepared for some freaky stuff. A film was released in 1941 showing Soviet scientists reanimating a dismembered dog head inside of a machine. According to the report from the Daily Mail, the machine somehow circulated blood throughout the brain and restored all the basic motor functions of the dog's head. But even though the film was released to the public in 1941, the experiment actually took place in 1928 in an area when all scientists wanted to be like Dr. Frankenstein. The device for keeping the dog's head alive was known as the autojector. It apparently allowed the dog's head to react to light and sound, even though it had no body. This same system of artificial circulation is what we use today in thousands of different operations to keep people living even when their heart isn't pumping and their lungs aren't breathing. It's a crucial piece of scientific technology, and it all started in the 1920s by experimenting on dogs, as horribly unfortunate as that is. As for the zombified head, there is some speculation over whether the video is real or it was just part of a propaganda campaign to make the Soviets appear more frightening. In any case, you now know that the first zombie was a dog. Thanks for watching. What's your craziest animal story? Tell me about it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.